Today, we're going to be talking about how emulation is good. We're going to be talking about how emulation and piracy are different, and we're going to be talking about how piracy is okay in some instances. So let's go ahead and get into this. Now, if you're one of the people who comments on my channel, emulation is piracy, and you're commenting this on this video right now, I want you to actually watch the video and listen to what I have to say, and if you still want to comment that I'm a thief or whatever, or that I'm promoting piracy and that I'm an idiot or whatever, I want you to know that you chug paste. You're not very smart. In fact, if you're one of these people still upset after watching this video, you might want to get checked for brain damage. Anyway, let's get into it. So we're going to start off the video actually talking about what emulation is, and then we'll talk about how it's different than piracy. Then we'll go into the good about emulation, why emulation is so good. And then at the end of the video, we'll go into some instances where I think piracy is actually justifiable and okay, and there's nothing morally wrong with it. In some instances, keep in mind. So what is emulation? So I went to Google and I simply asked them, what does it mean to emulate a game? And this was the first result. In the world of gaming, an emulator is a piece of software or hardware that emulates or imitates a video game console. Now this doesn't only mean your PC or your Steam Deck, this can mean your Nintendo Switch imitating a NES so you can play your Nintendo Switch Online NES games. This can mean something like the Nintendo Wii emulating the GameCube so you can play your GameCube games on it. This can mean the Virtual Console, which was something on the Wii and Wii U that allowed you to play classic games from the NES or whatever. Emulation is great. It allows you to play a lot of old games without actually owning like an NES or whatever. And if you're one of the people who are against emulation, I hope you never ever played a classic game like Super Mario Bros. Without owning an NES, because then you emulated. If you ever put a GameCube game in your Wii, you emulated. If you ever played an Xbox 360 game on your Xbox Series X or Xbox One, you emulated. And remember, emulation is bad according to you guys. So now that I just explained what emulation is, let's explain what piracy is. Now the first thing that come up was talking about movies, but this applies to games as well. Piracy refers to the unauthorized use or reproduction of someone else's intellectual property such as music, movies, software, or books. This can include illegally downloading or sharing copyrighted materials through file sharing networks, torrent sites, or other online platforms. Now that I just read out both those definitions, I want you to seriously tell me with a straight face that emulation is piracy. The only reason people think emulation is piracy is because a lot of emulators allow you to play pirated games, and a lot of people do emulate their pirated games. But that does not mean emulation is piracy. Blaming an emulator for playing pirated games is like blaming a DVD player for playing pirated movies. It's extremely moronic. Also, as a lot of people pointed out to me in previous videos, you don't need an emulator to play pirated games. You can use a Nintendo Switch, a Nintendo Wii, whatever, to play your pirated games on there as well. Not every single emulated game is pirated. You can redump your own games that you own and play them on your emulator, and it is 100% legal. But now that we discussed what piracy is, what emulation is, and how they're different, let's go ahead and talk about why you might want to emulate instead of using original hardware, and why in a lot of cases it's objectively better. The first reason as to why emulating a lot of the time is better than playing on the original hardware is because the enhancements that newer hardware gives you. Things like frame rate drops or performance issues might not be present on newer hardware that you play these emulated games on, whereas on original hardware you might get more frame drops, stutters, stuff like that due to the weaker hardware. In a lot of cases, the emulators themselves give you a lot of enhancements as well. They allow you to do things such as upscale the game's graphics. Like a lot of games used to play in 480p, but now you can upscale them to 4 or even 8K. Not only can you up the resolution in a lot of cases, but you can also go ahead and double the frame rate. Demon's Souls I think used to play in 30 FPS on the PS3, but when I emulate it, I can go ahead and tick an option to play the game in 60 frames a second. Another enhancement a lot of emulators allow you to use is to change the aspect ratio of some of these games. A lot of older games played in 4:3, but you can go ahead and change this to 16:9. Or in some cases, these games even allow you to change it to not only 16:9, but also 21:9, which is ultra widescreen, or whatever you want to call it. Not only do emulators allow you to use different types of screens, monitors, aspect ratios, and resolutions, but it also allows you to use basically whatever controller you want to use. A lot of people emulate Nintendo 64 games because the controller isn't really a fan favorite among the community. The controller is kinda clunky in my opinion, and some people would rather just use a PlayStation controller or an Xbox controller or a Nintendo Switch controller. Original hardware doesn't allow you to use whatever controller you want, but guess what does allow you to use whatever controller you want? That's right, emulation. Emulators also allow you to mod a lot of these old games, so you can download different mods to make these games more replayable than they would be on original hardware. Mods are very important to keep games alive. I mean, mods are the reason why people still play Doom 1993 regularly to this day. Like, how many years later now? 30 years later? Also, when you emulate games, if you have a legit copy of that game and you redump it, you never have to worry about that game breaking, or the physical disc breaking, or the console breaking, because you can back it up on USB drives or whatever and just use it whenever you want. Also, emulation allows you to make games portable that weren't portable before, such as putting these games on your Steam Deck and running them through emulators on there. You know, originally, the Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario World, they weren't portable games, but now thanks to emulation, they are. Now here comes the controversial part of this video. Instances where I think piracy is okay. What did you say? So obviously piracy in most cases I think is morally wrong. Like, it's kinda morally wrong to go and pirate a movie that's readily available for you to buy, or to pirate a game that you could just easily buy on Steam, like the game I'm playing in the background, Dying Light. However, there are a few instances where I think piracy is 100% morally okay and there's nothing wrong with it at all. Now, I'm not giving you legal advice here because legality and morality are two completely different things, and while I might think these things are completely moral, that doesn't mean they're completely legal. The first instance where I think piracy is okay is if the game isn't sold anymore. If it's a game that isn't sold anymore and you pirate it, it's not being produced anymore, meaning the company isn't making money off that game anymore, meaning even if you were to go buy a secondhand copy, it benefits the company who made the game in no way at all. Also, when you buy secondhand, you might get scammed. It's happened to me before, and before you tell me to buy from people with 5-star ratings or high ratings, I bought from someone who had a high rating, and I still got scammed multiple times from these people. Not only might you get scammed, but you might also have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for these old games due to how rare they are. And imagine paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a rare game, and then getting scammed on top of that. It's easy for some smug asshole to sit in the comments and try to judge with some holier-than-thou attitude about how just buy secondhand, bro. It's clear that people like that have never dealt with what I've dealt with when I was younger. I remember receiving Partners in Time twice as a kid as a gift, and both times, it was a scam. Both games didn't work because I bought them secondhand due to the games not being sold anymore. If I would have known about the joys of emulation and piracy back then, after that second time getting scammed, you know what I would have done. Another instance where I think piracy is okay is if it's to download like a Japanese only version of a game because it isn't sold where I live. I can't buy it, therefore the only way for me to play that other version is to pirate it. Same goes with like playtests and demos and stuff like that that you can't get or play anymore. If the only way for me to play it is to pirate it, then so be it. The final instance where I think piracy is okay is if you already own the game. You own a physical copy of the game or whatever, and you pirate it. Like, if I own Tears of the Kingdom, I own a physical copy of Tears of the Kingdom, then I don't think there's anything wrong with me downloading a copy of it off the internet as well. Once again, it's not legal, and I'm not advising you to do so. However, I don't think there's anything morally wrong in that instance because you own a copy of the game, and Nintendo tries to make it as hard as possible to legally redump that game and put it on your PC. Now, the only reason why I think people are against piracy in every single instance, like even the ones I listed, is because they have like these caveman-like mindsets where they hear the word piracy and they immediately think bad, piracy bad, stealing bad. These people don't stop to think critically for a minute. Hey, maybe it's okay to pirate a game demo that isn't available anymore. Maybe it's okay to pirate this playtest that you literally can't play without pirating. Maybe it's okay to pirate a Japanese-only version of a game if you own the English version. Maybe it's okay to pirate something you own a physical copy of. And once again, this is not legal advice. I don't, like, I'm not telling you this is legal, because it's not. But legality and morality aren't the same thing. It's legal to marry a 13-year-old in some places in the world. That doesn't make it moral. So to end this video off, if you see people in my comments of my videos saying emulation is always bad, piracy is always bad, you can link them this video and it'll explain to them. And hopefully if they have working eardrums, it'll maybe get through to them. I don't know. Anyway, peace. And you might be saying in the comments, you came off quite rude in this video towards people who don't like emulation. It's because I receive like smug comments every single day trying to shame me for emulating. That's why.